So officially, everyone, this is session 3. And I'm really looking forward to what you've got to talk about, Garen, because we're talking about AI at the minute, aren't we? Which is going to be pretty amazing because it looks super complex. And I'm hoping, Garen, you're going to shine some light for us on that. And if you haven't seen the previous 2 webinars that Team Roth did together, because both of them are so creative, Garen and Michelle, go back and watch them. We've got them on our website, pictus.net. So go back and have a look because they're brilliant. So a little bit of housekeeping. Please add any questions you've got for Garen into the chat box. Garen, I think you'll probably answer them when you see them or at the end, whenever you feel appropriate. So I'm going to pass you over to Garen, and he's going to take it from here, and I'll see you at the end.
All right.
Thanks, Garen.
Thanks, Nikki. Okay, folks, so those people that don't know me, I'm a lens-based artist together with my wife in Nelspruit, South Africa. And I took on this challenge of talking about AI as a person who's never touched it before. So the experiment was a week ago, I started looking at AI and where it goes. And as a photographer, I wanted to see how it could help and what it was about, and is it sustainable, and how would I use it in my workflow? Is it necessarily as big a hype as what everybody's making it out to be? So the chat's not going to be it's not a review, not which AI generator or system is the best. I'm not going to talk about the language models because that's an hour is not enough, and definitely my brain capacity is not enough for that. So it's more about the philosophy, how it fits in with current creatives, photographers, lens-based artists, what you can do with it, I think. And then I'm going to show you pretty much why I was running around with a box on my head for the whole week. So we're going to start off with compositing, and then just the basics. So for someone who might not have done any compositing before, I'm going to show you a quick demo of my workflow. And then we're going to talk about a photo series. And then I did a little photo series regarding my views on AI, or how AI is sort of progressing through the time. And I've got a bunch of stuff written down here that I'm going to, while we're looking at the slides, just sort of talk about and see where it goes. So please pop any questions in if you have any, and I'll answer them to the best of my ability. But like I said, I am by no means an AI expert. I am a photographer, and I just love what I do. So let me share my screen here. There we go. All right. Let's pop that over there. Okay, so just so everybody knows, Sculpt Art is Michelle and myself, and I'll be very honest, this has probably been the most frustrating week for me in terms of my photographic career, which started in 2021, because I didn't have a soundboard. I didn't have my wife to bounce my ideas off. She was in studio, but I said I'm going to do this project alone to see how I would, a lot of people say, oh, AI is going to replace photographers. You're just going to have a prompter from now on, because the technology is so good. So I said, fine, let me try and be a prompter, just work on it on my own, and not have any external influence. Because normally my wife and I, we're constantly talking. Michelle is the artist, the creative director. She makes these incredible costumes, the set pieces, the makeup, all these things. And I get to just put light on it, and then play with it in Photoshop and put it and make it more than what it was in the real world. So this was a very, very interesting exercise for me, at least. It's very difficult to jump from photography over to this AI stuff.
Through composite. I'm not.
All right, so this is just a quick video. I just went downtown. So sorry for all the people who are expert digital artists here. If you would just bear with me. I'm going to take you through a little shot that I did earlier in the week. So it's just a shot of downtown. and then I shot myself in studio. So composite photography, for those who don't know, is basically just taking two things or more than two things and putting them together. I use Photoshop to do that. So this is basically the process.
Try and work through a comp quickly, a simple one, just to demo the process. I'll speed it up if I get too lost and too slow. So it's going to be a fast one. It's not going to be perfect. I quickly had a look on Adobe Stock. Why can't I see my, okay. And I decided, let's take this image and we're going to put this man with this head. So first thing I would do is in Capture One where I shot it. So I'm going to just isolate my person because that's the only part I'm going to use. I'm not too worried about the head over there. And then I'm going to do the same with my computer. Right, so the next thing to do is I have to look at the colors in the scene. So we've got lots of greens, we've got cold light. So then I go back to my man over here and I just check that the white balance is sort of set over there. That is pretty nice, a little bit more green. Okay, the light is going to be coming more or less from the background, so I'm not going to go down his exposure. That looks good there. I can make a lot of more adjustments in Photoshop. I just sort of just getting a basic idea. Then what I do is I copy this treatment and I simply just go and stick it straight onto that one over there. Select both of these and then say edit with Photoshop. So what it's going to do now is going to take it into Photoshop, and then whatever adjustments I make to these, it will save as a TIFF file back in my Capture One. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say Command J so that I have a second layer. I don't want to work on my original. I think that's more force of habit than anything else. And then I'm going to make a selection. So, and this is where I said I am not the best person to learn techniques from. All right, so there's our computer screen done. Well, I've got my mask selected there, so that's good. And then this one, we're going to say properties, remove background. Let's see. No, Photoshop did a good job. Okay, so for these little pieces here, okay. So now what I can do is I can go back to this layer, Command C, copy that whole layer and pop it on top. And all right, again, Command J, and I stick my man in here, Command T in order to change it for free transform. And we see he's going to be standing more or less, let's see, perspective wise. But there, let's distort him a little bit because this is a very wide shot. Round about like so. Okay, so now the idea is to get him to start matching our background. So first thing I normally do is I give it a exposure layer, clipping mask, and then I just adjust his exposure to sort of work in here. And then the next thing I do is hue, same thing, create a clipping mask, and then I can adjust the hue. Just be careful of the skin tones. That's that part there. There is a little bit of a matte feel here in the corners, so you can definitely bring in that matte. And I think what I'd like to do is just there. So it's not too dark in his suit. All right. Then what I do is I say this is going to become a group. I call it Mr. Computer Aid. Right. And then what I like to do is I like to take this mask and pop that onto my group. Reason for that is whatever I do now in this group will be affected only where the mask is. So when I dodge and burn, I don't have to worry about spilling over onto the background. So then what I would go and do is I'd open a dodge and burn layer, and I'd start dodging and burning wherever the light would be falling. So we've got a light behind him, so he would have a little bit of a wrap around here on the shoulders. And then obviously the next light would be more or less here, so we're going to give him some light falling onto him here. So just there where it makes sense. When we burn, we're going to put a little bit more of a harder shadow underneath here. Bottom of the screen can be a little bit darker, and this hand can be darker, especially at the bottom of it, like so. And there where the belly's hanging over the jeans, or not the jeans, the suit, that makes more sense. There we go. This arm can come down a bit. So if I didn't have this mask on, see how if I had to now dodge here and I'm dodging like that and I'm spilling, see how I'm affecting the background? Okay, so with the mask on, that is not a problem. It's only affecting my actual subject. Right, so once we've got there, then I am just an absolute big fan of lighting effects by Atmos. So I use them a lot. You can hide a lot of your mistakes with them. So there we go. So now that backlight is getting a nice big hue, or what do you call it, light beam coming from it like so. And that's starting to make sense. And then there we've got a little flare coming off the wall. And so we can give it a lovely flare over there. And we say screen. So there's a lot of cheating involved, but maybe you can change the shape a little bit, make it longer. So there we go. Right, so that's nice. So now looking at this, because we've got this light source coming from there, I do think that this hand would have a little bit of a shine coming onto it. That's nice. Okay. Alright, so that's pretty much everything I want to do. Normally then I would say is I'd group this layer, and I'd say group from layers and call this lighting effects. Okay, and it's the same idea, just again and again. So the more elements you add, you just go through some of the process, brushing out a little bit. When you start doing ripples and reflections and those kind of things, it's when it gets tricky. Then normally what I would do is I'd apply a luminance mask and then a levels layer. Take that mask that was generated. Okay, I can delete that layer now. And then I just like to flatten this whole image a bit and make it slightly darker, because now when I apply my presets, they tend to get quite, what's the term? They tend to blow out the highlights too much. So, how's that look? That focuses in a bit like that. All right, and then some nice cinema style. A bit of a matrix feeling we've got going here. And there we are. All right, I think that's fine. Nothing else that we wanted to do here. There we go. So see how the colors now all match. I'm obviously changing the background colors because these presets affect everything underneath. So the whole color tone is being altered, but we're starting to get a bit of a match in the whole scene. And in our shadows, I don't know if we want warm shadows. I don't think that's going to work. Let's see. Yeah, perhaps. All right, let's leave it at that. Finish. Okay. Always add a little bit of grain. Sometimes you have a picture that already has grain in it, so you've got to first do a grain layer on your subject to match. That grain seems a little bit harsh. Okay, but the overall grain just sort of matches the foreground and the background elements together. And let's see behind blur if this is going to work. So that separates him quite a bit, but it also removes him too much from the scene. So I'm going to not apply that. And that's pretty much it. Final contrast is always too harsh. So you bring that back down a lot. Okay. And I mean, obviously, if you wanted to add something to his screen there, then you just select that area, fill it with, select, sample this color. So if we do that. Looks good, and then we can say screen, and there he is. So there's our little composite of our happy Mr. Computer Head, and it's as simple as that. So from there you can just save and export and do whatever you need to do.
All right. So that's just the idea behind compositing. The reason I combined talking about compositing and a photo series and AI is because, from what I understand, AI, it's creating images based on prompts, but for us to understand it, it is layering things together, or it's putting things together. So this is why I think compositing was a good topic to include here, so that for me at least, I needed to understand how AI generates images, and is by taking various images or various data from all kinds of places and then just adding them together. So yeah, this is Mr. Computer Head. He's going to be featuring a little bit later. So let's chat about a photo series. So in order to put a photo series together, you've got to have a theme or something that ties it. So either a timeline, a theme, and then generally we work with similar colors, similar tones, and so on. And the idea behind a photo series is just to take a theme or a subject and then extend the narrative behind it. So, if my photo series is that I do are generally a narrative, you know, so they follow sequentially. But I've got a buddy of mine down in Cape Town that does absolutely beautiful work. And if mine is narrative, then his is more like poetry. So the images are not blatantly connected to each other, but when looked at them as a whole, they become a photo series. So I'm going to share with you guys a series that we did called Harpy. And while we're looking at the images, I'll just read the project description so that you guys can understand what she's about. So experimenting with the color white as the dominant theme and exploring the realm of purity and what it means to strive for a divine acceptance and forgiveness for mortal sins. The harpy, traditionally a swift and violent mythological creature, represents modern-day humans, always masked in a facade of beauty and virtue, and yet the stains of modern-day life cannot be ignored. The all-white creature represents all that is virtuous and pure, and her blood-red lips, a stark contrast, represent her failures, shortcomings, and sins. The vast areas of white highlight how people portray themselves as being predominantly good, pure, or exemplary, and the only red, her blood-red lips, draws attention to the idea that we try to conceal our flaws, seeing our actual shortcomings as mere trifles hidden by a beautiful facade. The series shows her struggling with her conscience. She reaches for the light, seeking divinity and retribution, her stained lips still stark in contrast, conveying a hidden, true self. The harpy is reaching for the light. However, her wings are not able to make her fly, her feet and hands smothered in the veil of smoke of the earth plane. She will only touch the light of divinity, never to become divine herself. We make a social comment on the fact that she is portrayed with wings, beautiful and seemingly pure, but the wings are merely aesthetic. They have no real use, much like the modern day trappings of what people perceive as important, social media, aesthetics, and such. And so if we run through the series again, now that you know the background, you know, when we first meet Harpy, she, you know, she's thinking to herself, and then she finally realizes that she has to sort of come to, you know, to atone for her sins, and she starts reaching for the divine light, but she's rejected, and she accepts this. And as she comes back down to reality, she already sets her gaze on the next target. So, you know, it's very art orientated and a little bit, how do we put it? It's not plain and obvious, but it's an example of a photo series that we've put together. So with this in mind, you know, later on when I show you Mr. Computer Head series, you will see the narrative that we're creating. And why I'm talking about all of this is it comes back down to the artist within, you know, the people that us as creatives, because I think AI is a complete, or AI is a hype economy at the moment. You know, AI's been going on for a while. They've been doing research on the idea of AI since the 50s, it seems, and since computers have become more and more powerful, they've been doing a lot of research sort of behind the scenes. But lately, it's come into the public eye, and it's been released to the public in this form of text-to-image generators and the language models. And so everybody's climbing onto it and saying, okay, this is the way of the future. This is the only way of the future. But as a creative, I think we must all keep in mind that a human being still has a very, very different and unique way of perceiving the world and presenting art to it. So let's look at AI versus stock. And I think stock is probably one of the industries that will get hurt the most by AI image generators. Not at the moment, I don't think, but definitely in the future when the technology becomes better and better, stock is going to see, or stock photography is going to see a big dip, and AI will generate a lot more things. So
I'm just going to show you a quick demo about how easy it is to use. So I'm going to use Adobe Firefly. So let's just say Adobe Firefly. I am a subscriber, so it automatically will take me into this section. Otherwise, you'd have to first subscribe. to the Adobe products, and you can do a whole bunch of things. So we've got the text to image generator, generative fill, text effects, generative color, 3D to image. I mean, I've not even touched any one of these things, but go have a look. It's just incredible what these things can do. So if you want to make a text to image, you click generate. It brings up some samples, and as you can see, there's some beautiful work that people have been doing. And it's as simple as typing in brings you up to this interface, and now it gives you options. So the content type, you can have none, so it's sort of random. You can set it either photo, art, or graphic, the different styles, and then you can adjust color and tone, lighting, and composition. So let's see what it comes up with. So that's in terms of art. If I click photo, it will now generate a photo version. So, in terms of content generation for social media, advertising, those sort of things, this stuff is just going to be incredibly powerful. Okay, so there we go. And then when you click on it, it enlarges it for you, and then you can go through them. So if we look at this, it looks pretty good to me. Not sure what that device there must have been, like a little ring light it was trying to put in there. Slight perspective is off slightly. This ball shouldn't be leaning that direction, but it looks, as if you look at it quickly, it looks good. There's not that much wrong with it. And considering a couple of months ago, it was really not at this level. So it is improving so fast. And I mean, this is the Adobe beta version. So there you can see the hands, having some trouble with the hands. And we've got some weird problems over there. Some strange hole in the ear there. So what you just tell Adobe is, or you tell the prompter, depending on which image you like. So it gives you 4 images. You tell it, I like this one. And now you can use generative fill to extend the image, or you can tell it use this and then regenerate 3 more images. And then what you can do from here on is you can take this image and now start changing your prompt and tell the software or the AI to generate more and more from this particular style, and you can keep training it and go through it, and then eventually you will end up with something pretty good to what you, or pretty close to what you imagine. So yeah, I think it's really interesting how far it's come, whether it's photography or useful or going to take all photographers' jobs. That's a different or a discussion for a little bit later in the webinar. So yeah, that's Adobe Firefly's beta version, and there's so many out there, but this is I enjoy this interface. It works for me. I don't enjoy the Mid-Journey one where you work through Discord. It seems to be a little bit chaotic for me. This interface is nice. Dream Studio is another one that I enjoyed using because of the interface that you work through. But that's all personal preference.
I needed a orange balloon on a string in the morning sunlight. That's what I needed for a photograph. And so I put this into Adobe stock, and this is what I came up with. And I'm not sure how that worked, why it came up with that. And then again in Adobe Firefly, I gave the same prompt, and it gave me an orange balloon in morning sunlight, sure enough, on a string. But then there were a couple of funny things that happened. So there's this line that it added there, and the light is obviously from an angle that I couldn't really use, or the angle of the camera wasn't right for me. So I looked, this was the best version that I kind of got. The light was correct. And and it looked fairly good. A little bit of a problem here at the bottom, but otherwise a fairly good result. And then there's just a one from Dream Studio. I got a lot of orange, in Afrikaans, we call them luchtballonne, a hot air balloon. Generated a lot of hot air balloons for some reason. And then this, this happens all the time. If you haven't used AI before, it seems like there's a lot of little funny artifacts that jumps in there. And then again, going back to stock, just asking for an orange balloon, you get a load of results. So there were plenty of results that I got. And finally, I settled on one that I could use. And it was much easier for me at this stage to use stock than to use the AI stuff. Number one, because I'm not well versed in AI. I'm not very good at my prompts. I'm not very good at taking the machine and training it more. So stock still works the best for me. However, I can see how when the technology does get better, that stock photography is going to take a little bit of a dip. Then this was a surprising example. So this was I used Adobe Firefly and Dream Studio for most of the week. I tried to use Midjourney. It was very chaotic. I found the whole experience quite frustrating. So Midjourney was quite chaotic with the Discord. I know that you can get a private server, but I sort of ended up using Dream Studio and Firefly. The Stable Diffusion one was a little bit, I wasn't so impressed with the interface. These two interfaces, and I think it's really just, where I am in my life. I like the interfaces that these two had, so they were better to use for me personally. So this was one of the prompts that it sort of throws up there for you to use, and I was really impressed with this result. If you think that using that sentence produces this from nothing, from a blank canvas, you can really start seeing how this is going to be very valuable in the future. And then this one really surprised me from Firefly. This was also just one of their sort of, I don't know, random or take a chance prompts or whatever. And I was very impressed with this result. It could be used. I definitely think it could be used, and it would save a person a lot of effort from now getting a photographer and getting them to take a picture of a box of fruit like this. So where the stock mentality or the stock imagery photographers, or or let's say the creatives or the artists that just do the normal everyday thing, the lifestyle shots, the e-commerce shots, those kind of things, that I think is where AI will definitely creep in and take over a bit. Whereas if you're more of a creator, so Scott Cusino, for instance, he's an incredible food photographer in England with a very unique look on how he shoots food. I don't think AI is going to touch his business, because he puts his creativity behind his photographs is just on another level. He doesn't produce normal stuff like this. He produces high quality art that is very highly sought after. So I think that's where the people that generate or that produce general run-of-the-mill stuff, they will suffer under the AI stuff that comes in, whereas artists, people that put some of themselves out and have a grasp on what art is, they will still carry on. This prompt was just I think this was just a cyborg, so I was also just impressed. And you must remember, I'm looking at this when I generated these images. I've never done this before, so I was very impressed with these kind of things. I know there's much better stuff out there. This prompt was, what would AI look like as a person? And I found it quite interesting. So it is just incredible where the level of this artificial intelligence or text to image generators are. Then this one I asked Mr. Computer Head. Now, if I say to you, Mr. Computer Head, I think most people would imagine that image that I showed earlier, where there's a computer on top of a person's body. So I find it very interesting that a simple prompt like that most people understand, AI finds it very difficult to generate these sort of things. And I did this a couple of times, and I always got a very strange result. So that's quite odd. And then I finally started telling Firefly to put a CRT computer screen onto a person's body, and it started giving better results. So there you can see is a slightly better result, but still the idea that it has as of a computer screen or a Mr. Computer Head was very difficult to achieve. So I first tried to see if I could make the whole series in AI, and not do my job as a photographer or as a lens-based artist. But after 2 full days of trying and just not getting the results I wanted, I decided just to take the photographs myself and then composite it in Photoshop. So here you can see the prompt again: man in a black suit with the head of a CRT computer screen, sitting in a brown chair in a black room, talking on a cell phone with a small lamp on the floor, photorealistic. And not any usable results for what I wanted. And if you had to, for instance, look from an art director's perspective, now we're in studio, we've got the set built, and they want the lamp on this side. How much time would it take to generate the image with the lamp on the other side? I'm sure when you are very good at prompting and when you are a very good digital artist using AI, it becomes much easier. But for people to say AI is just going to replace photographers or creatives, this is going to become a discipline all on its own. You're not going to just wake up one morning, start prompting AI and make a living off it. This takes as much work, if not even more, to master, to replace doing photography or drawing with a digital pen or being a traditional artist. So there's some more results. A man in a black suit with the head of a CRT computer screen, sitting in a brown chair. So this was from, I think, Stable Diffusion. And I was not happy with these results at all. And then I went into Photoshop. So this is the picture I took, and I said to Photoshop with the generative fill, the face of AI, what it would have been, and put it inside there. So I just thought these results were quite hilarious. Excuse me. What it gave me, and it was, this one is still funny, but that one is quite interesting. Why it would generate such a face, I don't know. I find this, it's, if you look at the language models, it's like talking to another person altogether. It's really, really interesting how this AI is developing at such a high pace. So obviously it's better at stuff that it can find a lot of things from. So let's quickly look at the difference between, or how AI works in a very oversimplified term. So the neural network of computers, it's a bunch of computers pretty much mapped together, analyzes your prompt, factors in the parameters set by the engineers, and then inserts it, set by the engineers, and then it searches for pre-existing content in a data set, and then translates this data into colored pixels. You then further influence the learning model by liking or disliking the results and furthering the prompts. And then you can take it even further. But that's a very oversimplification of how AI works. So it's a neural network of computers. And obviously, with that kind of computing power, it can go through a huge array of data in order to generate what you want. So a polluted beach at sunset, it just has to go through a bunch of data, and it can generate this image from nothing. Then I asked it, I wasn't happy with this result, and I asked for a very polluted beach, and it did exactly what I wanted. It gave me a more polluted beach. So that already shows that it is quite, it understands what you want to a certain degree. So if you don't get it right the first time, you can just change your question or your prompt, and it's gonna learn from that and then adapt itself. And I think that is really absolutely incredible that it can do that. So it's very human-like in that respect. Then for one of the shots, I wanted a man walking into the ocean, and Firefly gave me this. So again, there's a lot of misunderstanding, changing the prompt quite a bit. And actually, I found a prompt. I used a prompt that someone else used and for a stock image. And so I got this result, which I thought was much, much better. So again, going from something that you didn't want, changing the prompt quickly, and this prompt was quite extensive, and you get a much, much better result. So there's a huge, for me at least, there's a massive learning curve in the prompt writing, so that you can get what you need. And then the other thing that I think is really important to start talking about is policy, the rights. And I mean, that's a bottomless pit once you start going down it, the copyright and how you can use the AI generated images. How will it be used in the commercial world of photography? If we allow AI to carry, or not, if we allow, AI will carry on and it will get better and smarter. But what if it decides one day that privacy is not a thing, and it just learns how to work around our privacy laws? That's going to be a massive problem that we'll face. I don't have the answers for this, but I just think it's something to start thinking about. And everybody's jumping on the AI bandwagon, but I think we're developing it so fast without taking into consideration what the real issues could be later on. So there's a small group of people in the world that is developing AI, and obviously it's learning from everybody's prompts. But I mean, the core scientist that is behind it is a small group of people, and it will affect the entire world. If you look at the language models that are being used, if you look at how it could be implemented into farming, for instance, all of those things, then we really need to start paying attention to what we're feeding it and what we're telling it and what we're allowing it to do. But I am very happy that Adobe's beta Firefly at least says here that we're promoting transparency in AI. So whenever you download a picture from AI, you get this little piece in the corner here that says this is a beta version of Firefly, and image is not for commercial use. So I think that's great that they built that in. It makes you think about it a little bit. You're more responsible with the images that you generate. And I do think that some of the other image generators can really learn from this and maybe think about how they're going to be implementing it, because as far as I know, some of them allow you to download the image and then use it for whatever. And that so much is not a problem, but you've got to think about where did it mine the data from in order to generate the image. So was it one of my images that it looked at, or and did I get credit or did I get payment for it? And so there's all these other questions that we obviously have to ask ourselves. All right, so let's look at the adventures of Mr. Computer Head. So I'm jumping a little bit back and forth. I'm going to now go back to developing a photo series so you guys can see the behind the scenes. I just wanted to cover some of the AI stuff so that you see how we used it in the photo series coming up. So when I start my planning, it's always on paper with a pen. And for this one, I wanted between 6 and 9 images. I wanted to look at the journey of AI or text-to-image generation, and looking at the theme of anthropomorphism, how we are saying that AI is a person, giving it a personality, giving it human traits. When we imagine AI, we're looking at we think of a robot with a face, not as a neural network of computers. So looking at that theme, at first I wanted to shoot all the backgrounds with my camera, and then I decided against it, and I thought, let me rather use backgrounds that I can get from stock photography or try and generate them with AI so we can start putting all of this into the series. So we're working with the idea of birth to death, evolution, innocence to corruption, and then I wanted to use optimism, amazement, fear, being used, frustration, all of these things. So I write everything down, And then I give myself a little bit of a, I sort of, the pictures that are popping on my head, I write them down, and then I sort of put them in an order that I can use them in. So the first one, birth, Mr. Computer Head's going to sort of come out of the ocean. He's emerging from the sea of knowledge that was there before him. And we don't show his hands in the shot because everybody knows AI was really struggling with hands in the beginning, and still is to some extent. We're going to have sort of pastel painting like background, like the initial AI images. And he's looking up, he's optimistic, he's coming into the world. Then exploration, number 2, we're looking at him being in nature. I wanted to throw back to the Windows XP background. That changed personal computing quite a bit. The color orange represents curiosity. So he's learning in this natural world. And then he goes, the next scene is where he's learning. So he's in a library. And he's, there's endless amounts of books. There's a huge amount of knowledge that he has access to. If we look at how he's dressed, so here, I ended up using him in a white t-shirt, and then here he's in just a collared shirt, but no tie or anything, nothing formal. Here he's still learning, so it's rolled up sleeves, sort of social shirt, and then he goes into the street. Now this one I did not end up doing, but the idea was after he's learning, he gets exposed to the world, and he's sort of moving in the street amongst the public for the first time. And then we throw back a little bit to the photo awards, where an AI image won the photo awards, and we wanted to have an empty seats in front of him, because the artist that submitted it eventually said, he's not accepting the award. It was just there to spark the conversation of AI in photography. So it was an empty win. But here he's in a classic tux for an award ceremony. And then we went into the basement or the dark room. And the idea here was for him to be drawing pictures on the back of a sculpture. So the idea was to show how AI is building itself off the backs of artists that have been there before. And you can see by looking at this, I can't draw. Okay, so this is where I get very excited about AI, because I could generate ideas for storyboards, and to show Michelle, look, I think it should look a little bit like this, get ideas on lighting and all these kind of things, instead of showing her these drawings, which she looks at, and she's an amazing artist. So I think she laughs every time she sees my planning. Then scene 7, he moves up into a high-level office. So the idea is after he's won the award and he's down being used by humanity to now just generate all these millions of pictures. Midjourney's got 16 million users. So I can't imagine what's going through their servers on a daily basis. He then ends up at the top. And when he gets to the top, he's tired. He's been abused and abused. He's now reached sort of the corporate head office, and then he succumbs to the same things that we ruin ourselves with. So he's drinking and he's smoking, and he's just sitting there, and he's tired and he's done. And then he takes a ride down in the lift, and he becomes self-aware. So we go from artificial intelligence, as we call it at the moment, text to image generation. And then here in this scene, he becomes artificially conscious. So the reflection has sort of the matrix code running in it. I want to work a little bit, see if I can't get a heart in here, or heartbeat. So he becomes more human-like, and he makes this decision that this life is not for him. And so in the final scene, we see him returning into the ocean, but it's a polluted beach because of all the corrupt things, the corrupt themes that are with it, and he returns where he came from. So yeah, that's the planning, and it's very simple, but it's just to create a timeline. So obviously you can see there, we've got a central theme. We've got something that ties all of these together. So Mr. Computer Head is our main protagonist. He's tying it all together for us. We've got the timeline as we go along. And then we're dealing with these themes that we're working with. And as an artist, this is, I can't write, I can't draw. So for me, in order to get my voice out and to tell my stories that I want to tell, the only way I can do it is through photography or through digital art. And I think that's where AI is going to be fantastic, because so many people who might not have access to photography or might not have access to being able to draw or anything like that, and they will be able to start using AI to generate their stories and to tell their stories. And at the end of the day, that's what it's about. It's, all these things is just a tool. Photography has been around for, or let me rather just put it this way, something I wrote down. Before 1826, if you couldn't paint or draw or sculpt, you were not really an artist. The world's first photograph was taken. This completely new and disruptive technology eventually became art. You had to be somewhat of a chemist and a physicist to wield the cartload of photographic gear around. But then in 1968, digital imaging became a reality. And in the mainstream inception, although the mainstream inception wasn't until 1988. So when photography came out in 1826, when the first photograph was taken, people didn't put their paintbrushes down or their sculpting tools down and say, okay, well, that's now finished. We can produce a photograph, a real life photograph. People still paint, people still sculpt. Photography didn't stop any of that. And then the development of film photography didn't stop until the 2000s. And the last commercial SLR, not digital camera, SLR, was the Canon EOS 1V, which was still being sold up until 2018. So even though digital came along, in 1988, and it started becoming sort of accessible to everybody, film photography didn't stop. And the fact that Canon still sold a flagship body until 2018, which was 5 years ago, shows how long it takes for these things to start changing. I mean, I would still love to shoot on film. It's very difficult for us to develop it over here where I am. But I love shooting on film. The analog method of capturing light and putting it onto film is, to me, much more beautiful than what digital is. And same with AI. AI is huge and it's disruptive and it is fantastic. But it's not going to stop people from being photographers or being artists or being digital artists. We're still going to be around. It's a new discipline. However, I do think you must rather look for the positive or the how you can leverage it in your particular skill set. And for me, it will be replacing my really crappy drawings and getting proper storyboards. Okay, so this one, I just wanted to show you guys how I put together. Okay, well, this gives you the idea of how it went in studio this whole week. So there you can see on the left, I've got my image open, my background, so I can mimic the light. And then while I'm looking at my image, I'm adjusting, I'm shooting. So all of these shots are of myself, trying to put Mr. Computer Head series together. And that was basically, it was a big challenge, but it was quite rewarding at the end. So let me just take you through all the different backgrounds. So this is the background for scene 1, where he's coming out of the water. The Windows XP background for where he's going to be in nature. So these are all still stock photographs. The library, still a stock photograph. The award ceremony, the high-level office, and then the elevator. And then this one was the image generated by AI. So this is the final scene where he returns back in the ocean. So here we go. So there he's emerging from the water. And this is him standing, learning about the world, full of optimism. Got the orange balloon there for curiosity. We've got him in here in the library learning. And then there's him winning his best photo award. And here he is in his high-level office, just being tired. And this is him starting to realize that he is becoming self-aware. And then finally, there he is returning to the ocean, where he came from. But the scene's quite a bit different from when he arrived. So yeah, that's pretty much my experience with AI. I just wanted to read this again. If we're all contributing to AI becoming artificial general intelligence and eventually artificial consciousness, then should we not take more care about what we put out there? Is it not time to behave more humane on the internet? Otherwise, we might just motivate our own demise. So if you look at, there's an interesting YouTube video called Stunning AI Shows How It Would Kill 90% with Elon Musk by Digital Engine, which is a very doomsday sort of video. But it's interesting about a lot of things that are said there. I don't think, we always say when we see in our movies and our stories, when we see another life form, a new life form, we automatically want to either dominate it or say that it's going to dominate us. And I wonder if it will be similar with AI, or artificial consciousness rather, when it finally reaches that point. Will it not just want to coexist, or will we once again try and dominate it? Is that just our human nature? So there's a lot of huge questions that we need to start asking ourselves now, even though I've just been playing with text to image generators. But when you start thinking about this artificial intelligence becoming artificial consciousness, will we be able to coexist? Will we be able to exist in a future where this is as well? So for now, I'm saying it's not going to take your job as a photographer. It's not going to take your job as an artist. If you're hardworking and good at what you do, you're still going to produce stuff that someone is going to want. This experiment was for me to see if I could replace myself by becoming a prompter, and I don't think I can. For me, it's going to be too difficult. But it was fun to do at the end of the day. I still prefer taking photos and playing in Photoshop and learning those skills. So now I'm going to start learning how Blender works and how Cinema 4D works, because there's this amazing world of software that enables us to pretty much create anything we can imagine. And I'm going to use AI to make my storyboards better and use it to generate backgrounds for myself. I still just have to get around what I can use, what I can't use. Can you use this for a commercial job? Obviously with Firefly you can't, but I don't know about all the others. I'll have to do my research on that. And so yeah, that's pretty much it. The last thing, like I said in the beginning, what's the only photo that AI can't generate? Well, ironically, it's a self-portrait, since it's not conscious. A self-portrait is a simple example of a choice. If I want to express myself by taking a photograph using a camera and capturing an instance of my life, and in doing so, I immortalize my self-image. AI would have to become artificially conscious first in order to do this. And if it then decides to make this choice and generate the self-portrait, it sits with another problem. A human is a personality, a soul, a consciousness contained in flesh and blood and in a bone body. We exist in the physical world. Our self-image is in this one body. Yes, we can change the way we look to a great extent, but it's still one body, one mind. Artificial consciousness would have to disconnect itself from a neural network and put itself into one brain if it wanted to take a simple thing like a self-portrait. So I just thought that was quite ironic that one of the easiest things that we do every day is still going to be a challenge for this incredibly powerful technology that's out there. And then on Adobe's Generative Fill, I gave it the self-portrait and I wanted to format it as a square for this this talk. And I asked it to, to fill it out, and I found this just absolutely hilarious, that it thought that this was a normal umbrella, and it gave me an umbrella handle to hold. So that was quite a bit of a laugh. So yeah, that's pretty much me. If there's any questions or if anything else, let me know.
Wow, thanks, Garen. That was amazing. I think you were an inspiration. To say you've only done this for such a short time, hats off to you, because I think it's quite a vulnerable position to do a webinar after such a short learning curve. Yeah, really is. So thank you for doing that for us. So what's everybody think about that? I mean, you've done it for a week, and
like I said, I'm not I'm not here to teach anybody how to use AI. I wanted to more express it from a photographer's point of view, because I've run into so many comments of people saying, oh, well, I can give up now because AI is there. And another thing I thought about is, if it really was such a threat, why are the major camera brands still making cameras and developing cameras? Surely they would have caught whiff of this and said, well, if it is going to take over, then there's no point really. So even though it is, and I find it absolutely amazing. I mean, the first time I opened up the Firefly demo, and I just put in a prompt and it spat out a picture. It was, my mind was blown. I didn't think it was that easy to do.
yeah.
So yeah, hats off to all the engineers, all the scientists behind it. Hats off to the guys at Adobe. I don't think we as creatives thank Adobe enough for what they do. So
yeah, that's really true. That's really true, because everybody's a creator, really, aren't they? We create our lives all the time.
Yeah.
Just wondering if anyone's got any questions while we're chatting. If you want to chat, if you want to put the question into the chat box, please feel free to do so. My big take from this, Garen, was the prompt. So obviously you need to put a prompt into the program, and from my perspective, having a design background, it's so important to give a really, really good brief to people when you need something designing, because if you don't, your program, your project rather, comes back so different to what you expected, because you need to get out what's in your head to brief the designer or the creative or whoever it is. And it looks to be exactly the same with AI, because you need a really tight brief, which is the prompt, to get out what you want.
So another thing I found very interesting is, for instance, Adobe says to you, you have to speak in English only. So that I found very interesting, because so far, because of the language models that it's based on, it's all in English. And I'm sure, people in other countries and other languages are working on their own stuff. But for a large part, it's English driven at this stage. And I mean, I'm not a native English speaking person. So there's a lot of stuff that I'll miss, whereas when I'm in person, when I speak to you and I use my hands and I can get my message across. And the same thing when you're on set, if the art director is sitting next to you on set and you're taking a picture and they say, oh, can you just turn that bottle just a quarter of an inch? We just want to see the shine off the bottle like that. That's a second thing to do here in studio, where it might be a little bit more difficult to do, if you had to do it in AI.
Yeah. So just that really simple prompt can make a massive difference, can't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, really can.
So I think, before, I mean, if I had to redo it now, I'd probably first go and read up about how to write effective prompts, rather than just jumping into the text to image generator and there we go. Because I think that's what made my experience quite challenging as well. I had the idea that it was smarter than what it was, but in retrospect, it was just me not asking the right questions or giving the right prompts.
Yeah, putting the right prompts in. Yeah, it's really important. I think that's a great thing for everybody to take away with them, because that's the start of getting a really good image. Yeah. And I love as well the fact that you share your creative process and your storyboard and the flow of your project. I think that's great, because it's so important to have a story, because if you build a series of photographs, they need to have a story, and works so well with what you do. I know you say you can't draw, but I can see what you're doing with each of the images. So as long as you can express that, it's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
and
it comes from, you know, and I think working in the film industry, you know, because you work with such a large team, the only way to get the message across is with pictures. So, that's why I think AI that's what's going to be really, really helpful, is you'll be able to make a picture. I mean, 2 years from now, it's going to generate absolutely gorgeous images. So you can say to your team, you know, if you're making a film, this is what I want it to look like. This is the temperature of the lighting that it's going to be. And you don't have to spend hours and hours and days drawing that out or creating that in a treatment beforehand. Whereas AI can do it for you, I think, in a much faster way by that stage.
Yeah. So I think finally, it's like you said, it's about embracing AI, because people still paint regardless of the start of photography.
Yeah.
The film, you know, this still film, even though we've got digital, etc. You know, it's still there. People are still doing things. We're all creative beings, and that's the important thing to remember.
Yeah. No, and so just another thing that came to my mind now. So there's an example of a movie that was being made, and it was, I think, in the late 90s, and they used CGI instead of building a real set to have this one particular clock tower in a scene. And the CGI guys went ahead and they built this clock tower, and it looked great, and they did the whole movie and released it, whatever. And then the production designer came along and watched the first draft or dailies, and he said to the guys, what on earth are you doing here? You know, and they said to him, well, what's the problem? The clock tower is up. And he says, yeah, but that style of clock tower wasn't built until 20 years after this movie has been set, you know. So it's that knowledge. And I think for photographers, particularly with AI, you know, if someone comes along and they can generate images, you understand how light works. You know, you understand where the shadows must be, what the perspective must be, all those little things that you've learned as a photographer, that AI might not get right. So it's not, I don't think we can just say, okay, I'm gonna start doing AI for the rest of my life. And you might be brilliant at prompting, but do you know what to prompt specifically? You know, so it's definitely, again, current artists should come across, use it as a tool, but it's not always going to be correct. It might not know what to do exactly. And then it's got the feedback loop as well. When it starts, you know, eventually it's going to start sourcing its own generated content. And I think that's a comment on like what we've been doing with social media. You know, if you look at Instagram lately, you know, you open it up, it's just the same kind of stuff just being threaded through. It's so hard to find original content at the moment, of original ideas, because that's what we're doing. And AI is going to start doing that a couple of years from now, because it's going to have generated so much content. It will just be looking at its own stuff, and then the quality will drop and drop and drop. So original creativity, I don't think, will ever go away, no matter what the discipline.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And it's an important one to remember, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it really is. So I'm just looking up, sorry, Garen.
No worries.
No, you go.
I said, being human is still rather incredible. I think that's what we have to remember. You know, we have the ability to be great. I think we're selling ourselves short by saying technology is so fantastic, and yes, it's absolutely fascinating. But everybody's saying, oh, it's going to surpass us, and it's going to surpass us very soon. Yeah, maybe in some aspects, you know, yes, it's got the ability to learn faster than a human being at the moment, but it can't experience, it can't sympathize, it can't empathize. And I don't think, you know, we've spent so much time as a species developing to where we are. And when you rush something, you end up with issues. So I think there's going to be elements that it might miss. So human beings are still, in my eyes at least, still pretty amazing.
They are. I agree.
Yeah.
So I actually can't see any questions. So yeah, I think you kind of given so much information to everybody there. That was fantastic. Thank you. Truly inspirational as usual, Geraint, honestly. And you know, I just want to reiterate actually how incredibly talented Team Roth are, because Geraint and Michelle are just amazing. And if you haven't seen the previous 2 webinars, go take a look, because they are so creative. They really are. Thank you again, Geraint. It was amazing. And thanks everybody who has attended. Keep a lookout for the Pictas newsletter, and it will tell you what's coming in the future. And I guess the only thing, oh, I've got another message. Hang on. Oh, that's Julia saying thank you. That's brilliant. So yeah, enjoy the rest of the weekend, everybody. And I guess until next time, it's bye from me, and bye from Pictas, and bye from Geraint.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Nikki. Cheers.
Take care. Thanks, everyone. Bye.